Hey, it's Liz D'Alto, and this is the Untamed the Wild Soul Woman podcast. From body image, sex, spirituality, money and relationships, to motherhood, creativity, business, communication, and desire, Untamed the Wild Soul Woman is the place to come for real stories and powerful advice to help you reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. Welcome to episode number 170 of the Untamed the Wild Soul podcast. I am your host, Elizabeth D'Alto, and today's guest, Elliott Hulse, is someone I've been hearing about for years and was super excited to finally connect with. We got into all kinds of man stuff in this episode, from masculine archetypes, primarily king, warrior, magician, and lover, inspired by the work of Robert Moore, to the cowardliness of modern men. And believe me, it was amazing and refreshing to hear Elliott throw down on that term, cowardliness, and how he approaches working with men, experience what he describes as simply a lack of heart. We talked about connecting with feelings, using them as indications, and his personal path to growth and awakening. And because I can't resist, we also talked about how he and his wife, Colleen, integrate wildness and structure in parenting their 4 children. You'll probably want to listen to this one at least 3 or 4 times. Enjoy. Also, if you listen to the podcast on iTunes, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. We've been doing some randoms here and there sporadically off of our regular Monday schedule, so make sure you don't miss a single episode by clicking that little subscribe button in iTunes. Now for the show. So excited to have today's guest with us today, Elliott Hulse. Elliott is someone who I've been meaning to connect with for the last 5 years. And finally, everything always happens in divine timing, as you guys know on the show. So Elliott, welcome.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Pleasure to be here.
Our first question for all the men is, what do you love about being a man?
Ooh, where do I begin? Well, the first thing I have to say is I have no perspective on what it's like to be a woman, so I can't draw contrast.
Okay.
Right? I like being physically strong. And, you know, women too, though. You met Natalia, who is a friend of ours because she comes to Strength Camp, which is my gym.
Yeah.
And we have been doing a tremendous job bringing physical strength to women. I mean, my wife deadlifted 235 pounds the other day. So I can't say that that's limited to men. I enjoy the polarity with women. I guess I enjoy being a man because there's women.
A lot of men say that.
We get to have that dance, right? If there was no male experience, there would be no female experience. And if there was no female, well, our experience would be so much more dry or non-existent.
Yeah, actually, you wouldn't be here because
right.
we make you.
What I love about being a man is women.
Yeah, cool. So one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you on the show, which I mentioned in the introduction, is we talk about feminine archetypes and embracing feminine and masculine a lot, but I've not really had a deep dive conversation with anyone yet around masculine archetypes. And I know a lot of your more recent work, which I'm so pumped to dive into, revolves around these masculine archetypes. So for anyone listening, you know, before, I don't usually prep for interviews. I'm usually just like, cool, we'll just have this conversation. But I really knew I wanted to dive into what this king body of work you've put together was all about. And I'll share, I was trying to remember who I was talking to recently on the show. I think it was Sati and Raja. And I was saying how, you know, a lot of people are self-proclaiming themselves kings these days. And right there on your page was like king. And then it says, yes, self-proclaimed. And I'm like, damn, he's calling me out. You know? Mm-hmm. But I liked the way you took that head on and you approached it because you were like, and I'm doing that because I have done this work. So I read it on your website today, but can you share, I was so intrigued by how you talked about the one archetype of warrior and how you were like doing everything and coming at everything from that place, and it was only getting you so far. So let's start there, and then I'll take us on the tangents.
Well, I begin by saying that men and women both have, according to Robert Moore, and this is the way he teaches it, who is a neo-Jungian psychologist who delved into the aspect of the male psychology, or the anima. So, is it animas, and then anima? Men and women both have their sovereign, their king, their queen.
Right.
And they also have their lover quality. As much as women have their lover quality, men have their lover quality. both have their magician quality, their spiritual quality, that transcendent quality. And we both have our warrior quality, our decisive, disciplined quality. The only difference between the expression within the feminine and the masculine of those four archetypes is when the lover and the warrior emerge in their fullness or most fully expressed. And the way he describes it is that men from the ages of 14, puberty, 14 to about 30, mid 30s, are really expressing their warrior. I mean, this was something that was necessary for our development as a race on this planet, right? For what it was that we're built to do. It's also social. It's been built into our social structure so that men tend towards warriorhood in that particular way, aggression in that particular way. But at the same time, generally speaking, women are fully engaged in their lover aspect. And it is not until about mid-age, and I say this with such conviction because it has been my experience. And I started dating my wife at 14 years old. So I've watched not only myself go through the changes I'm about to share with you, but I've watched my wife also have the same exact experience where at about middle age, women begin to discover and exercise their warrior, and men begin to discover their hearts and begin to discover their tenderness. I like to say tender aggression. So, of course, my first half of life, I created a tremendous amount of momentum by doing everything with the head, with the warrior, with aggression. And I did it pretty well. So much so that when it was time to put the sword down and rediscover my heart, it was easy for me because I had no regrets.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now when it's time to adopt the heart, to get into the feeling body, it was so easy for me because, I did the aggressive thing for so long and for so well. I played college football. I was a professional strongman. I built my business and built my family at the same time, all with ego, all with head strength, all with aggression. Yeah, so it's nice to allow it now.
Well, and something that I noticed on your page that I thought was really interesting was you listed out, so those four archetypes, king, lover, magician, warrior. And I know that comes from a book. We'll put a link to that book in the show notes, which actually that book is sitting on my shelf, but I've never read it. So I'm excited to just have a conversation about it. You listed out also kind of like the shadowy side of those archetypes, right? Mm-hmm. Which is like when it's being expressed in the shadow aspect. So you actually had, even though you went through an evolution from warrior into lover, it sounds like you must have had a relatively healthy relationship to warrior because you were using it to be effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So of course the shadow poles, the polarity of the negative aspect of the warrior is the type of domination that creates patriarchy. It's getting the job done without regard or complete disregard for anyone or anything else. It is an immature form of the warrior.
Yeah.
The true warrior is expressed through its loyalty and its commitment, and particularly its loyalty to a transcendent other. The focus is not on what am I getting. See, like a mercenary does his work for pay. A mercenary does it for what he is going to get, or a soldier. A warrior does it because it's what's right and it's what's best for everyone outside of the ego.
Cool. So can you describe the other ones too? Just in your understanding. Obviously people can get the book and dive in, but I love hearing like in their own words and in their own experience. So what is the magician?
The magician quality is associated with our ability to be self-reflective, objective. The magician, which is probably the most, it's the toughest one to understand because it's about the unconscious.
Yeah.
It's about the still small voice within. It's about the soul, Anytime we are meditating, we're accessing our magician. Anytime we're in deep contemplation, or exercising our magician quality. A lot of thinking is associated with that quality. The lover aspect is sensuality, it's sensation, it's intuition in a different way, meaning like recognizing and honoring the voice of the body. it's compassion. It's very much rooted in the heart. It's very much body oriented. And of course, you can have it shown up in different expressions, but at one extreme with the expression is just this addiction to sensuality, promiscuity, So, and with all of them, they have their polarities.
Yeah.
Our king and go ahead, please.
No, that was it. The next one, king, is the one we haven't touched yet.
Yeah, baby. King, queen, sovereign. This is the quality that is about integrity. This is about bringing it all together. This is about being fully lined up. Our thoughts, our words, our deeds are congruent. The two qualities that are associated with the king. And I like to say, I'm a coach, and I use these terminologies and these ideas to run my business and run every aspect of my life. And I have coaches. I'm a coach, and I have coaches that coach people, and I tell them that coaches are kings. The only way you're going to be an effective coach is if you are being it. I can't give you or motivate you in a direction that I am not in integrity with. That's number one. Number two is blessing. Integrity and blessing, meaning I'm so lined up that in other words, my cup is full enough that it spills over, that I can support others. I can bring joy and hope and generativity into the lives of others because I'm bringing down the integrity quality. So with regard to kings, it's order and blessings.
I love it so much. So again, the shadow side of these things was the shadow side. What's funny is when I was on that part of your page, which we'll put a link to this page in the show notes, but when I was on your page, you basically listed out kind of like the shadow aspects of each one. And I'm like, oh, I totally dated a person who was completely operating in all four shadow aspects. And I'm like, that's why that was so challenging. I was like, crack, it's funny now. It was not funny at the time. But I was like, oh. So shadow aspects of king?
Is the tyrant.
Yeah.
When you look at the way the world is being run now, but we live in an amazing time because the walls are coming down. The whole system is crumbling before our eyes.
Yeah.
Light is scattering darkness at a rapid rate. It is patriarchy is run by immature forms or shadow aspects of the king, tyrants.
Yeah.
So you don't have to look very far to see because our entire civilization is built off of this aspect.
Big time. And then you mentioned shadow of lovers, like the promiscuous, doesn't know what he wants, going after that. And then what's the shadowy side of magician?
The trickster know-it-all. That guy who sits back there and like, the thing with the magician is that he doesn't do anything. He thinks. So he's got all the answers. I think we've got a lot of these today because of the internet. The internet has made it so easy to bring ideas into your head so that you could spit it back out. And everybody knows, everybody has knowledge. But very few people have understanding. What stands underneath the knowledge is the embodiment of the knowledge. So it's a matter of these people who, they know everything, and they sit back there with their smirk, but they never do anything.
I know. We talk about that on the show. It's so, there's nothing less attractive and more repulsive to me than that quality, right? Yeah. Because how many people are so magnificent? They're not, because it causes turmoil internally and externally, right? So many unsatisfying relationships in the external world and the inner emotional turmoil because a person is not expressing themselves. I remember the years of my life when I was trying to figure out who I am in the world and what I'm here to do. And just the internal turmoil of feeling like I was sitting on this mountain of potential and I could help so many people, but I wasn't yet because I just didn't know what I needed to be doing and how painful that was. And so I know, for people who actually have it in their heart to want to help, that does suck. And so, that's a fascinating place to be.
Yeah, that's when you got to get off your ass, pick up your sword like a warrior, and do the damn thing to have the power.
Yeah, just do the thing. So, we talk about This is a conversation we've had before too. A lot of the teachers out there, a lot of that like warrior king mixed spirit of personal development world of like take massive action. Like yes, and sometimes that same kind of massive action gets people to be like burned out, sick, like not spending time with their family, all the things. So how do you personally, Elliott, you integrate, it seems. You've just integrated super well, healthy family relationship. You run 3 companies. You're in good physical health and shape. How do you do that dance of integrating the things and using the archetypes to your advantage?
I think you use the best word, integration, because we're raised to believe that there's a good and that there's a bad.
Right.
There's the right way to do things, or the way that the world has told us is most pleasing to them for us to do it, and then there's the bad way, the negative, the evil. And when we take that dichotomy, we take that duality, and we integrate, meaning evil and good, night and day, yin and yang, woman and man, and we bring them together into ourselves, we move beyond judgment. We move beyond right and wrong. To answer your question and how this relates to me being able to balance and juggle my whole family, is that I don't judge what's right or wrong. If I don't judge anything. I don't judge anything about the way I'm approaching things. In other words, this company should be making more money, but it's not, so I need to go do it, without looking at the other aspect of it. So this company's not making as much money, but I'm spending more time with my family. Mm-hmm. Or I'm not spending as much time with my family, but my company's making more money. With every bad, there's a good. With every up, there's a down. We just have to stop looking to win. Every time we're trying to win, we're trying not to lose, and that's when we are out of integrity. Mm-hmm. That's when we are in dualism. What you're talking about when you say integration, and what I'm talking about, is polarity, recognizing that you never get one end without the other. And it's a matter of allowing the dance between the two, the light and the dark, to happen, and relish, enjoy when things aren't going well, be just in bliss, because it's concomitant with things are going really well. Yeah. They go hand in hand.
So super easy to say, just be in bliss when things aren't going well. So give us how do people actually do that when the shit is hitting the fan? Maybe whether it's practices or,
Well, I can share something with you right now that I'm having fun juggling.
Cool.
So I get a lot of love from the world, but there are those that I think, because I get so much love, that some of the hate or degradation that I'm also receiving from some people is pretty bad. So, and most recently I've been dealing with, people make videos about me, and they're not very tasteful and shed light on me in a way that I'd rather not it be. So I could see that and allow my initial reaction, which is or fear or anger, to get the best of me. But it's just so funny, because we're talking about something that's happening right now, I'm working through right now.
Yeah.
It's so funny that as that shows up in my life, at the same time, there's a brand new sun rising. Mm-hmm. I'm so busy creating an outline for new videos and new products and even my body's new. I'm doing new workouts that I'm like, of course, I must expect that with all this awesome newness and all these people loving me. I just got back from Georgia, where we did a grand opening for one of our new Strength Camp gyms, and 100 people showed up, and there was a line there with young men wanting to hug me and tell me how they've watched me since they were 14 years old, and now they're 21 years old, and I changed their life. So much love that when this nasty little thing, and I don't say little, when this nasty fucking thing comes, that portion to the love, I have to look at it and say, yeah.
That too.
Could I expect anything less? There's a lot of love there, so there's going to be a lot of hate. There's going to be a lot of heat.
It's so interesting. I remember I wrote this Facebook post a really long time ago, some point last year, of being like, hey, y'all, if you're going to get really excited about or actually, no, it was from this angle. It was like, if anything negative coming towards you, if you're willing to go, oh, well, that's just projection, and not really like take a look at what might be true or what might be useful for you, then I hope you're all willing to do that too for all the love and praise that's coming your way, and be like, that's just projection. Like, it's all in the eye of the beholder. And so I love the polarity of the thing. And I appreciate that you're willing to look at it and go, yep, this is happening. But look at all these other beautiful things too. I think that's so funny. Who was I don't remember who I was talking to about one of my clients recently, but in naming my stealth, my book is called Untame Yourself. The movement program is called Wild Soul Movement. I mean, I feel like the things we name our stuff is like our invitation to life. Would be like, okay, show me what you got in this realm if I'm taking ownership of it. So I think it makes a lot of sense that, of course, as you go into this realm of I am king, I'm going to help and guide and lead other men to be in their king. And I'm going to have to deal with a lot of immature men who were just probably so confronted by that and totally not ready and totally don't want to hear it. So bless you for that.
Yeah. There's no sacrifice. There's no king without a sacrifice. Jesus, whether you're Christian or not, he was the king that died. He was the sacrifice because you literally have to give something up if you're going to draw down those celestial blessings. Yeah. If you're going to connect with the Father in that particular way, you have to die to yourself. You have to die to various aspects of yourself. You have to let go of a lot of things. Yeah. A lot of people don't reach that integrated place because they're not willing to go through the pain of death and rebirth, death and resurrection, crucifixion, sacrifice.
Big time. So, you were calling people out. I love calling people out in a mature way, in like a loving, like not so much calling people out. It's more like calling people forward. I feel like the calling people out is actually like putting people down from a place of needing to be superior, but calling people forward is being like, yo dog, I see you. I was there too. And there's this whole section on that King page that I keep referring back to of you were talking about how men are cowards. Can we go off on that a little bit? Again, it's not about like name calling or putting people down, but there's a lot of truth in that.
So that term comes from the inability to get up and do the thing that you're so much talking about, like we spoke about before. This it's the warrior quality, and the other end of that is the sadist, and the masochist, because I can be a masochist too. I think a part of why my warrior is so exercised so well is because I like punishment. I just put myself through the ringer. Like, give me the toughest, and I'm gonna have joy in being in the toughest place. But as far as a coward is concerned, cowardliness is a lack of heart. The word courage being the polar opposite, coming from with the prefix cor, corazon, our heart, the core of our being, and that means that there's a lack of love there too. To be a coward means that entire spectrum, lover and warrior is out of alignment, because if you don't have the self-love that's associated with having the courage, they're kind of both in the same. It's love and courage. The love and the courage, they go together. You have to have unconditional self-love. Love yourself enough to say, I'm going to go for it. So with the coward, there's a lack of love. There's a lack of unconditional self-love. And it's that self-love that fuels your ability to go after it and to have discipline and commitment and be decisive.
Yeah. So I know you've worked with like thousands and thousands of people over the years, and I'm super curious. Like, I'm intimately familiar, and we talk about a lot on the show, what are the reasons, what are the blocks, why don't women love themselves? And there's issues that like men and women certainly share, but even culturally, living still in a patriarchal culture, even though that's gradually crumbling, as you mentioned earlier, before our eyes, which is a really cool thing to be around for. What do you find are like the common, maybe top like 1 to 3, what are the things that men are really struggling with that like keep them from loving themselves? Like maybe some of the common like shames, wounds, like those types of, I love opening up these perspectives because I think there is a common belief that it's just like easier to be a man And I think especially in our current culture, it's probably like the most confusing time ever to be a man.
Yeah, it's the most confusing time for all of us. That's why it's the greatest time ever.
Yeah.
The question mark precedes the answer, and we're on our way. So I would say that it's no different than that which the woman struggles with. And you mentioned that question comes out of love. And love, the lover, is all about sensuality. It's all about feeling. It's all about getting in touch with your truth, your intuition. And we've been taught, I read your website earlier, and you spoke about getting out of the head and into the heart. Well, that's what it's all about. It's a matter of being able to, first of all, we're so deconditioned from our ability to recognize the spontaneous movements in our bodies, the voice of our bodies, that we can't even trust ourselves. So the very first step for all of us in order to get into that place is to honor your feelings. No feeling is wrong. No feeling is ever wrong. Every feeling is an indication of something that's there. It might be more challenging for men because women are allowed to cry. Women are allowed to feel. Women are allowed to be emotional. Men aren't taught that. In fact, we're taught the exact opposite, that when you cry or when you feel or when you have sensations, you're to ignore that. You're to stuff that down. So none of what we would like to see happen to humanity will ever unfold. Luckily, this is happening because there are guys like me. Until we all begin to reconnect with our sensuality, reconnect with the feelings in our body, reconnect with our intuition, and then trust it enough to let it guide us regardless of what the head says.
Yeah.
Then we will begin to live in a whole new way.
Did that come naturally to you? That kind of trust and that access to intuition, or is that something you had to work on?
Intellect is up here. Down here, I'm grabbing my balls right now, is
nice.
Instinct. Okay. Instinct is the true spontaneity. Instinct is oftentimes very void of any intellect whatsoever. So it's not fearful, but it's not very loving. It just goes, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine. There's no judgment there. Actually, it's our most primordial energy because there is no judgment. This is what judges. The intuition is here. The intuition is the bridge between the instinct and the intellect. For me, I don't know if you could call it courage or stupidity. I'm very instinctual, and I've allowed my instincts to guide me in a lot of instances. Because I've let my instincts guide me, there are a lot of good things that have happened to me in my life. Yeah. But because I've let my instincts guide me, there are a lot of bad things. I've made a lot of bad decisions. So the difference now, as a maturing male, is that I've always had access to instinct, and we're taught how to use this rational thing, which I never trusted this so much as my instinct.
And for those listening, not watching, when Elliott is saying intellect or rational, he's pointing to his head. And when he was saying intuition, he was pointing to heart. And as he told you, when he was saying instinct, he was grabbing balls.
Yeah, right, because it's embodied. Our consciousness is embodied. Our body is not any different than our brain. I say your body is your mind. That's one of my sayings. I've learned to bring the instinct up into the heart to let it be more transmutated. Cool. I'm proceeding from a place of love now rather than a place of fear. All of my instinct, I let it run wild, but it was fueled by fear. I became successful fueled by fear. I would never tell anybody, don't crush it. Hey, if you need to crush it because you're scared right now, use that momentum because, the fastest way to get somebody to go is to send a hungry dog after his ass. He's gonna run. Yeah. If you put a apple pie over there or something that he could aspire towards, he'll get around to it and he'll lovely jog towards it. Yeah. You put a chomping dog after someone's ass, they're gonna go. So I was able to create a tremendous amount of momentum, but when you're fueled by adrenaline in that particular way, your body and your mind takes quite a beating, and I've experienced what that beating feels like. So I got to the place where I had no choice but to allow my heart to be in its truth, to open up and to be accessed.
I really appreciate that. I was having a conversation with a client recently who is having a baby, and her husband has been in a place of non-traditional employment. That's going to be like the really lovely way that I put it, for a while. And all of a sudden it's like fire under the ass, like getting it together, like taking action he wasn't taking before, because like that thing, it's no longer just like, okay, me and you, but it's like, I have a child to provide for. All right. There's purpose. There's meaning. That's the dog now chasing that man. He previously, like, the urgency wasn't there before, and now it is, which I think is awesome.
Yep. Yeah, he's going to go get it. Good for him.
Yeah, super cool. Guess what, everybody? The Wild Soul Oracle deck is officially open for pre-order, and you can grab yours at wildsoulmovement.com/oracle. This is something I've been working on all year, which those of you who follow me on Facebook or Instagram know, as I've been posting some behind-the-scenes photos. But this Oracle deck was basically inspired by looking at our modern media-saturated world and observing that there's more than enough others trying to tell us what things mean and asking us to trust them. With this deck, I'm offering you untouched images of flowers, healing mantras and messages, illuminating reflection questions and rituals, each of which invites you to connect to the meaning, wisdom, and truth within and to trust yourself. The cards are beautiful. I had 2 amazing artists help us out with this. I wrote the guidebook while I was traveling through Europe in February. It is just beyond my wildest dreams. I hope you all love it too. Again, that link is wildsoulmovement.com/oracle. And this is our first run, so we do have limited availability. So if you want one, head over there and grab it because they are going to sell out. Now back to the show. So I'm really glad to hear you say, so I know what a lot of, there are men who listen to the podcast, usually because a woman in their life has been like, you got to listen to this. So for the women that are doing that with this episode, because I always encourage them to do that when we have a dude on to provide the male perspective, I know they come together. I'm just so glad to hear a man say the thing you said about feelings, that like no feeling is wrong, and your feelings, like they're packed with information and indications towards the intuition to help you get into your heart. It's so good. So what do you find? I'm curious about this. Are you familiar with Alison Armstrong's work at all?
The Amazing Development of Men.
Yes.
I just played it for my 12-year-old daughter.
No way! Oh, man. Life would have been different if someone played that for me when I was 12.
Yeah, that's why I did it.
Oh, my God. So I'm loving tangent, and I'll come right back, but I'm almost more excited to follow the children of people like you than I am to even follow you, because I can't wait to see what these humans turn into who are getting access to these things that like the rest of us had to figure out in our 20s and 30s. And some of my listeners are like 40s, 50s, 60s even. They're like, damn, I'm just figuring this shit out now. So that's so amazing. But, oh, great. I'm so glad that you're familiar with that, because I'm curious in your work in helping men, through these archetypes and transition into king, she puts a pretty distinct kind of broad age range on these developmental stages. And I'm wondering if you buy into like the age. So like 24 in Alison Armstrong's world, the likelihood that a 24-year-old dude is going to be a king is low. Mm-hmm. But I feel like you're speaking more in the archetypal place, where she's more of like kind of life evolution place. Does that make sense? The difference?
I would say it's a grounded approach, because speaking about archetypes is speaking about the collective unconscious. It's way up here. It's in the clouds. It's all idealistic. Yeah. When you bring it, like before when I spoke about men being in their warrior and women being in their lover and then swapping at middle age, Gary Vee put it this way recently. I like the way he says it. There's clouds and there's dirt. You need both. So when she puts it into time doesn't exist. If you want to get really scientific.
Seriously. If we want to get really esoteric, we can have that conversation.
But we experience this plane of existence through time. So I appreciate her doing that. I think it's good.
Yeah, cool. So, and relatively in your observation of people, would you say her timelines are pretty accurate or no?
I've always been a little early.
Yeah.
I married my high school girlfriend, started having children at 24. I'm just coming out of the tunnel now. I'm 38, so I'm probably about 4 years a little early.
Cool.
But when I look at some of my friends, they're a little late.
Yeah.
So I think she does a good job of showing a good roundabout what to expect.
Plus or minus.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I dig that. So how do you feel about, there's a way of speaking about all this when people say like, be a real man or like be a real woman, and like that word real, like it kind of sucks because we're all real, none of us are like Legos. Mm-hmm. But there's a truth to it. A girlfriend and I, did I already say this in the beginning or was I just thinking about it? We were laughing yesterday just about how like it's so sexy in the year 2017 when a man knows how to like fix shit and build shit with his hands, because that seems to be kind of like a lost art that like a lot of like younger men or even men in my generation, like they don't do. They like hire people to do that, and people are like can't even freaking hang a straight picture on a wall, not like everywhere, but like I know more dudes like that than I don't. How do you feel about like labeling things as like real or not real, or like the way people have these conversations?
Well, I'll begin with something one of my mentors told me when I was going through a pretty rough time. And he said, Elliott, for you to become fully man, you must become a woman first.
Oh, interesting.
And if you look at the work of Carl Jung, and he talks about, the anima and the animas, and that on the inside of every woman, there's a man, and on the inside of every man, there's a woman. We are, in the clouds, we're one, meaning outside of the embodied 3D experience. From the 5D experience, there is no polarity.
Right.
Male and the yin yang, we're one thing. In the concrete, in the 3D world, I have a penis and you have a vagina. There's no two ways around it. As much as the world would try to blur those lines, I will always have male hormones and male body parts and have a male biology, and same with you. The thing is that when you say real man or real woman, that is not even coming from biology usually.
Right.
It's usually coming from conditioning.
Yes.
The idea that women are supposed to be a particular way and men are supposed to be a particular way as it relates to our social roles can change as quickly as it has, where, you got so many men who are at home with the children and you got women out there striking out in their careers. Now, whether or not they're doing that because it is their truth or they're doing it because, she had a dad who wanted her to be a lawyer and he didn't have a dad, so he only knows how to nurture because he's his mom. Who knows? But the idea I think I'm trying to get to is that to become fully man, you've got to become a woman first. We've got to become integrated. That the truth is that I'm not trying to be a real man or a real woman. I'm trying to be an integrated human being, and that's what we're after.
This is the word I've been looking for the whole time. Fully. That was like a full body resonant, like, yes, like fully. And even when I talked to Satya and Raja, he talked about in growth, transformation, all these things, there's willingness and there's capacity. Sometimes people have both a high willingness and a high capacity. Sometimes later in life, the capacity is high, the willingness is low. Sometimes earlier in life, the willingness is high, the capacity is low. And that's just another way to journey through the experience. But I love this fully is kind of like, that's where the sweet spot. There needs to be willingness and there needs to be capacity, but it comes back to the sovereign, like the queen king archetype, like you're talking about, is like, and you got to do the friggin' work. You got to show up.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing. So I'm always super curious about what's like the lineage of someone who, like, the making of Elliott Hulse, the origin story. So I do know I had my dear friend Raj Law was on the podcast giving the most hilarious description of coming to one of your grounding camps and doing the breath work, because Raj is like one of the least woo-woo people out there. So he's describing it. I'm like dying. By the way, I asked Raj, what do you love about being a man? He goes, dick magic.
He's a great guy.
Zero hesitation. We'll put a link to Raj's interview in the podcast. But what's cool talking about like that inner man, inner woman, I now have women in my community who are like, well, I got to get this thing done today. I got to bust out my own dick magic. So
yeah. And there's a lot of dick magic in the world. The patriarchy is all about dick magic. You look in Washington, the monument is just a big fucking penis coming up out of the ground, right?
And you can use it for good or evil.
Right. It's about balance and fullness. Yeah. I'm proud to say, because Raj being a man of my own heart, meaning I get it. I was a professional strawman. You can get more manly than Elliott Hulse when I was choosing to be that way.
Yeah.
And I knew very early on that it was my calling to get men, meatheads, and turn them into hippies, bring them into balance with their feminine.
Yeah.
See me go from 260 pounds flipping 1,000-pound tires and yelling. I'm known for screaming in the camera. Now I'm going to have a workshop where I'm going to teach you how to feel into your body and to breathe, and you're going to dance for 3 days straight. It's just perfect. It's that coming into fullness.
That's so funny. Yeah. So what were your things that you studied? Like how did you get there? Like I know the Osho meditation, that's a big piece of it. So like what are some of the pieces of like your own learning, evolution, journeying, growth, whatever? So strength training, one of them.
Well, maybe I'll just name some of my most important mentors,
sure,
living and dead. First of all, my parents. My parents embody a tremendous yin-yang polarity, where my father is traditional aggressive man and my mom is traditional passive woman, almost to a pathological degree, the two of them.
Yeah.
But they loved each other. And they did a great job with what they had to raise us. And we were able to see what tenderness looked like. We were able to experience true tenderness and true aggression. And both of them have a little bit of both because, we're both. So I got to see my mom be aggressive sometimes, and I see my dad cry. So it was amazing to live in a home where it was balanced in that particular way. When I was coming into my warrior stage, and that meaning about 14 years old, when a boy realizes that, look, a woman gets her period. There's no question you're a woman. When a boy turns adolescence, we've lost the ritual ceremonies, the processes by which our ancestors introduced boys into manhood. We need an introduction. We need a reminder. We need an elder. We need a little bit more support, because we are separating. You see, when a woman grows up, she's separating herself from her mother, but she's not separate from her sexuality.
Right.
When a boy grows up, he's separating from his mother, but he's also removing himself from the feminine sexuality. He has to stand on his own now. And if he doesn't have support there, it gets pretty challenging.
This is not a thing I've ever thought about, and I love that so much when that happens right in the middle of a show. Something we do talk about a lot is how our culture doesn't really honor ceremony, ritual, rites of passage, and all the various initiations we're having, right? Like even the same client I was talking to yesterday, I was like, by the way, don't forget to mourn that your life without a child is coming to an end.
Yes.
I know that grief usually hits new mothers after, right? And they're like, oh my God, like my life ended and I didn't have a funeral, a ritual, a rite of passage. Some women do blessing waves or whatever. And same for men, right? Do men go... I mean, that's what the bachelor party has become, right? But it's not really an honoring ritual. It's kind of like a debaucherous thing in a lot of cases, I'm sure. But it just never dawned on me before that, like, yes, there's a distinct moment for woman, even though for a lot of women it becomes a shameful thing that isn't necessarily celebrated, but it's a whole different line of conversation, where it's like, you now menstruate, you now bleed, like you are a woman. Whereas for an adolescent boy, there's not like okay. I mean, I guess maybe kind of like you start to grow hair in places you didn't have hair before and your voice starts to change, but it's not as distinct as like, okay, you're a man now. Fascinating.
Yeah, we need an initiation. Initiation is critical for our psychological and social development. It's not a nice idea from a bygone era. It is what is now and what is next. I'm a part of this. That's why I speak the way I speak and do the things I do, because this needs to come. It is coming back.
Yeah.
Because if this planet is to heal, which it is healing, with or without us, it's going to heal. It's healing. The masculine has to heal. We can't continue to cast the divine masculine into the shadow. Totally. And we've done that with the feminine as well. But we have to. The men need initiation. It's a different type of initiation. And I was lucky enough to have my uncle, who's my next mentor, to initiate me into manhood. He didn't know what he was doing. And I didn't know what he was doing until retrospect, and got much older. But he initiated me into my manhood by teaching me how to lift. I learned the discipline of lifting weights. I learned the process of lifting weights. I discovered the sacred space associated with lifting weights. My dad bought a power rack and he put it in the basement. And I go down into that basement, turn on the music, and it became a womb for transformation. I mean, I go down into the basement and weeks later, I'm 10 pounds heavier and I've got these muscles in places that I didn't know I could have them. I'm lifting things. I literally went down into that basement and it was a womb to be transformed. So I'd say that my second mentor or inspiration to be where I am would be my uncle because of that.
That's awesome. And again, so do you know who Connor Beaton is? Man Talks?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, I got to introduce you guys because you should probably be on a Man Talk stage. Not that I'm like telling you what to do, but offline, I'll connect you guys and make sure that happens.
Sure.
But that's how my brain works. I'm always like, who needs to know who? So Connor talked about I got so excited about making the connection, I lost my train of thought for a second. That usually happens at least once an episode. What was I going to say? One of the things that, one of my hypotheses about men was that there's a lot of women going, where are the conscious men, conscious in quotation marks, because they think they know what that's supposed to look like, because a lot of these trickster magicians have actually presented have like literally sold people on what it's supposed to look like, so they look superior when really they're still not doing shit, like we already talked about. But my hypothesis was that there's actually a lot of men who are super evolved, super conscious, super amazing, that like don't even know. So like kind of like what you said, your uncle did initiate you. He didn't even know he was doing it. So like that's what I'm talking about. Like I'm thinking now about my beginnings as a personal trainer back in the day at like New York Sports Club in Hoboken, New Jersey. Like that was a daily ritual. Those guys never would have been like, oh, I'm gonna go do my ritual now. But like being with the iron, right? Putting on the music, getting into the gym, being with their boys, or being on their own after a long day of work. Like rituals, unbeknownst to them. Amazing. Okay, so see, keep going. Parents, uncle, what else?
Oh, well, a myriad of football coaches and whatnot, college and high school football coaches. But when I went into my profession, when I started studying exercise science and becoming a personal trainer, my uncle was a personal trainer, and he showed me that road. He showed me the fact that I could work for myself even. He's such an inspiration. I connected with the work of Paul Chek. I don't know if you're familiar with who Paul Chek is.
Yeah.
And indirectly, meaning like I met one of his practitioners and I worked for him, and then directly through studying his work and going to his courses, and then actually when I said I spoke to a mentor before that told me about becoming fully man is to become a woman, that was Paul.
Okay.
I think the best way to say it would be awoken. He helped awake the holistic aspect or the holistic approach to fitness, to health, and to life to me for the first time.
Cool.
And I like that term awake because it's a matter of some things already being in us. Mm-hmm. And then if they weren't in us, they couldn't, no matter how much light someone shines on you, it'll never be exposed. And I love the fact that we do what we do because every single time someone watches your videos or listens to your podcast and goes, aha, you're literally awakening them.
Totally.
It's like, that was in you. You knew this. A lot of these things we know, but the minute someone else says it, it deeply resonates with us and it takes on a life of its own. And Paul did that for me around the age of 20, 23, 24, and I never looked back. But even before then, I was reading philosophy. I am of mixed race, ethnicity. My parents are from Belize. And one of the challenges that I posed to myself, because people would ask me all the time, is to figure out who I am. Mm. Say, Elliott, what are you? So I want to know what I was. What are you, Elliott? And that question stuck in my head. And I remember being like in 7th or 8th grade, going to the library and picking up my first philosophy book, because I didn't know it was philosophy, but it said, discover who you are. Who are you? I was like, this is a book I need. It was by Rollo May. I think his name was Rollo May, the philosopher and physicist. And I dug right into it, and it opened me up to quantum physics, which opened me up to Eastern philosophy, which opened my heart to being able to receive. This is all before Paul Chek too, so it's a matter of this unfolding. I started listening to Alan Watts audios on Napster when I was in college.
Napster, that is a throwback.
Yeah. So I was opened up to philosophy and religion by listening to Alan Watts on Napster, listening to Osho and reading Osho books. And then when I met Paul, I was able to integrate because my two biggest things at the time were lifting, and I was really spiritual. I really dug spirituality. And then Paul took the two and was like, yeah, they're together. They're together, and they should be the same. So yeah, Osho, Alan Watts, Ralph Waldo Emerson. I named my daughter Emerson, my second daughter Emerson, because Ralph Waldo Emerson.
No way, that's cool.
So he's a transcendentalist. I mean, in the 1800s, in the 1830s, he's a transcendentalist. Just that term alone, to even be used at that time, is amazing. You're transcending this. He was big into Hinduism, and he liked Hafez and Rumi poems. So I was influenced by his work. And then after I began my profession, I spent a lot of time studying marketing and marketing principles. And but I think my core teachers are still the same. When on my way here, I was listening to Osho's talks on Tantra. Earlier, I just quoted Paul Chek. I just talk about my uncles. I think my greatest mentors and teachers and way showers arrived early in my life, and I've just been riding the momentum.
Yeah. And I like how that you were saying, like, the unfolding, right? Forwards and backwards, and realizing how certain things impacted you. You might not have known it at the time, and it woke something up. It's super interesting. This gives me something to just chew on in my own contemplation later. That question, what are you? I'm very ethnically ambiguous myself. So, but my aunt...
I was going to say, I can tell because you're so beautiful.
Thank you.
We have a different look, You've got the light skin and the full lips, the freckles. Oh, my God, you're giving it away.
And people are like, what are you, Yeah. And it's so funny because my answer, I remember being, and it would mostly come from mostly a dude, right? Not necessarily, almost like that's like the in question to like start a conversation in college at bars or like earlier in my life, like, what are you? Mm-hmm. And I remember at a certain point being more irritated than intrigued, And so my sassy answer would be, well, what do you think I am? But then it started out as a sassy answer, but then I was curious because that kind of sparked curiosity for me about cultures. And, I've been meaning to do it. I haven't done one of those 23andMe things to be like, well, what am I actually? Because I'm so enthralled with like ancient Greek mythology, Hinduism, Egyptian mythology, and like the god, goddess pantheon and all that. So I'm like, I wonder if there's actually any of that in me, and I just don't know. And I mean, again, we could go esoteric, time doesn't exist, past lives. We could go down all those other rabbit holes. But that one simple question really is a jumping off point for many, many interesting things.
The Hopi of the Native American people, they called this generation, which they foresaw, this is a prophecy, and they described this as the children of the rainbow. And it's happening in America. I mean, we're really it. We're really the culmination. When you're asking yourself, am I any of those? We're all of it. It's just that we get to wear it on our face. We get to wear it on our skin. We get to embody what's happening on this planet, which is a full integration.
It's so cool. So we have a couple of minutes here. I want to wrap up about asking you about your kids. Because I remember before I hit the record button, I was telling you actually the first time I ever heard of Elliott Hulse was back in 2012 because you were at an event with some really close friends of mine. And one of the stories that my friend told me, walked away from that, you were talking about one of your daughters. So wait, how many daughters do you, I know you have 4 children. Are they all girls?
3 girls, 1 boy.
3 girls, 1 boy. Okay. That amazing boy. Lucky him. So,
yes.
But the story was just that I guess one of your daughters at the time was kind of in a phase where she would not be hungry for really long periods of time. And then she'd be hungry and she'd eat. And then just not be hungry. And you were just sharing how you just let her do that. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like making a child eat at mealtime. So I'm just curious. I always love to ask the parents of their parenting philosophy, especially when someone is kind of tuned into this stuff and teaches this stuff to the world. I'm always curious how they incorporate it in their own homes. So wherever you want to take that.
Interesting that I'm the way I am, meaning I'm very free and open, and I don't want to say I lack boundaries, but I'm skeptical of boundaries, right? Anything that defines, right? You can't define me, right? You want to know what I am? Well, I defy boundaries.
Yeah.
Destroyer of boundaries. A big part of it has to do with growing up with a lot of boundaries. My dad being a rebellious kid and then having a dad that was boundary maker. I grew up always wanting to fight that, Little did I know that a lot of my success came from fighting my dad in my head.
Right.
Daddy issues, they say. So, yeah, right? So I got my daddy issues, which makes me a boundary breaker. And, that is wonderful. That's loose. It's in the clouds. My wife grew up with the very opposite experience where her parents weren't really there that much. And it caused a lot of anxiety in her life, in retrospect. And she made a lot of bad decisions, and things didn't unfold the way she would have liked them anyway. But this is, in retrospect, we have to say it's all beautiful, it's all perfect.
Right.
So she's bounty hunter out there, and let's allow it to unfold. Let's see what happens. Let's create some more space. And I think that we do a really good job of bringing a sort of, the ground, the dirt, and the clouds, or bringing flexibility and stability into the realm with the way she approaches things and the way I would approach things. And so I don't always get my way, and she doesn't always get her way. It's fluidity within the structure. So, one thing that I'll give you an example of both, where my way of being brought a different element to the family and then hers. All of our children were born naturally at home. Colleen breastfed all of our children. This 12 years ago was kind of a new thing. And she received the encouragement and received even the idea that was a thing from my boundlessness, my limitlessness, saying, no, we don't have to go to the hospital because that's what they say. No, we don't have to feed our children formula because that's what they say. And I was just waking up to all these new things about health and fitness at the time, too. So I decided to break all kinds of boundaries when it came to bringing the children into the world. And she willingly accepted and championed it. She did a great job. When it came time to how we were going to raise the children, I said, homeschool. I want to homeschool. I want to farm. I was like, I knew exactly in my mind, I'm going to break all the boundaries. My kids aren't in school. There are boundaries. That's where they teach you boundaries. And, she wasn't having it.
I love that.
And
Good
so
for
my
her.
children, they go to school. So, on one end, we're free, loving hippies. And on the other end, we are, there's an element of establishment and discipline.
It's cool. And so how do you combat combat may not be the right word. How do you temper the establishment with, let's call it keeping it real at home?
Well, number one, everything, the nucleus is the individual, and that means unconditional self-love. Having unconditional self-love, which means not judging what comes up in you, your desires, your hope, your fears, and your dreams, and not judging what shows up on the outside, your relationships and your circumstances. There's no judgments. It's all of these things. That's the nucleus. And then putting as much trust and faith and honor into the relationship with your partner, my partner. And that means that I never gave up, and I will never give up who I am or what I believe. But at the same time, I fully 100% honor who she is, where she is, and what her hopes, fears, and dreams are. So when we come to these situations where, keeping it real, to some people might mean, well, it's my way or the highway.
Right.
Keeping it real to me means introspection, finding out what I really, truly do value or what the core value is as opposed to what my ego wants. And being willing to have the compassion to listen. That word compassion can go, it's not about a bleeding heart, it's about a listening heart. Just enough to recognize where she is and where she's proceeding from. If I'm listening close enough, there just might be a fear that's needing to be exposed that I could easily just point to, and the whole thing resolves, as opposed to judging or forcing.
Amazing.
So it's a synergy, it's an integration, it's a listening, and it's a moving forward.
So good. Great note to end on. Elliott, thank you so much. For those of you listening, we referenced a lot of things, a lot of teachers, books, all these archetypes, all this stuff, a lot of things that Elliott is up to. All of that can be found at untameyourself.com/episode-170. This is episode number 170 on the show. Elliott, we appreciate you so much. I geek out on my own podcast. I don't really listen to other podcasts, but I always re-listen. I cannot wait to re-listen to this one. You gave me a couple of things to personally take into my own contemplation, which is so awesome. So everyone, if you want more Elliott in your lives, check out all the links in the show notes. As well, on social media, Elliott Hulse and all the places. You can find him screaming at you on YouTube and Instagram and all the other places where he does things. And again, women listening, if you want to share this with a man in your life, this was some good man shit. So thank you so much. We'll see you later.
Thanks.
For me, because I see the world, I see myself as an active participant. I don't ever view myself as a victim. And so for me, I have to look at where I have hate and negativity in my heart. Where am I putting out not necessarily, the most beautiful light into the world? Again, we're all human, so we all have that. We all have unhealed places. We all have fear. If you believe that what is going on right now is a big fear-based agenda and fear-based reaction, we all have fear. We all have ways that we manifest fear and put it out into the world. And so again, thinking about yourself and what you've put out there and where you're judgmental. I'm judgmental toward people, where do you have maybe judgments or prejudices or things that you need to clean up? Because it's very easy to look at things that we see blatantly in the news very clearly, like when we see abuses of power, things that are despicable and disgusting. It's easy to look at that and point the finger and be like, these people, those people are vile. But not you and I, not the two of us. We are not that. But we all have, as human beings, everything within us.
All of it.
And so being unafraid to look at yourself in the raw and be like, okay, what do I personally need to clean up?